If we want to make peace, more of us should visit China. I visited China last November as part of a China is not our enemy delegation, originally sponsored by Code Pink, the well known feminist peace group. Immediately after Code Pink announced the tour, it was vilified in an attack article in the New York Times. Thankfully, we found Li Xiuhin and his China US Solidarity Network, who became our highly professional tour guide. I'm also grateful uh, to the Chow Collective and to uh, Sarah Flounders, both of whom were significant, along with Radhika, in the development of my book, as well as what I have to say today. Our visit started in Taiwan, so we could see clearly that Taiwan is very much part of China. Both Chinese governments and the US agree, officially sharing this view since at least 1979, when US President Nixon and Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping signed a treaty to that effect. So, why is the US pushing for Taiwan to be independent of the mainland, spending billions to arm it to the teeth and sending warships through the Taiwan Strait, thus violating China's territorial waters at the risk of triggering a flare up to war at any moment? Why is it forging an East Asian NATO against China? And why are Green Berets now deployed just 6 miles off China's coast, as reported recently by both Newsweek and Danny Haiphong? 6 miles off the coast of Xiamen. We met a Taiwanese couple who told us Nancy Pelosi's 2022 visit to Taiwan resulted in the transfer of a major part of Taiwan's very large semiconductor manufacturing business to Arizona. They said many Taiwanese consider this transfer to be a virtual theft of one of Taiwan's most important economic resources. It threatens Taiwan's huge business in chip sales to mainland China, Taiwan's largest trading partner. That highlights one of the reasons for the US hybrid war against China. The US only wants peace if it can continue to be the dominant economic partner. Touring in mainland China provides an education in itself. On the main streets of Shanghai and Beijing, traffic whispers along. About half the cars are electric, and nearly all the scooters and bikes are. Underground in both cities, the subways hum along. They're more extensive than New York's MTA and humble it for cleanliness and safety. All the stations I saw have escalators, elevators, and super clean floors. 31 Chinese cities have new subway systems, more than the US and Europe combined. We rode a bullet train from Shanghai to Beijing. These bullet trains now connect all of China's major cities, following the gigantic infrastructure projects of recent decades. The US has no bullet trains and cannot seem to find financing for them, especially since the profit potential in military production is so much higher. Some argue that China's fabulous development is based on super low wages and bad working conditions, but workers' wages have doubled and doubled again and again in recent decades. Last year, China celebrated elevating 800 million people out of extreme poverty, recognized as a world historic achievement. And social wages are much higher than in the US. Free education through university, socialized health care, and very low-cost housing for all workers. We visited Shanghai's famous Jewish Refugees Museum, which relates the stories of more than 200,000 Jewish refugees who found safety there after escaping Nazi terror in the 1930s. This pro-Semitic Chinese legacy provided contrast for me to recent US media reports of China's response to Israel's current bombing of Gaza. They called China's leaders anti-Semitic for refusing to justify Israel's genocidal Gaza bombardment. The issue of genocide was my main reason to visit China. I wanted to see for myself, to deal with the scandal stories in US media about the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. They echo US government claims of genocide in China. The claims are unfounded, based on flimsy evidence that has been repeatedly debunked. In researching this issue for my book, A Realistic Path to Peace, I found that when Noam Chomsky was asked in a New York Times interview if the situation of the Uyghurs was worse than for the people of Gaza, he said no. The Uyghurs were not having their power plants destroyed, their sewage plants destroyed, and were not subjected to regular bombing. Recent U.S. denials of genocide in Palestine, with U.S. support, absolve the Israeli leaders who have called Palestinians human animals and want to drive them out of their historic land. Meanwhile, the same officials and media scream of genocide and slave labor in Xinjiang, but provide no evidence. We were lucky to visit Xinjiang while the cotton harvest was in full swing. We found nothing to support US and European claims of slave labor, which have led to a widespread boycott of Chinese cotton products. Instead of forced labor, we watched a big mechanical harvester moving through a multi-acre cotton field, chewing up the cotton and spitting out 3-ton bales. We arrived just before lunchtime and noticed the harvester had completed half the field, producing 20 bales for 60 tons. It was expected to complete that field by the end of the day for a total of 40 bales and 120 tons. We also saw some gangs of hand laborers cleaning out the cotton on the edges of these fields, working in groups of 10 or 12, with their scooters parked along the sides of the fields. We determined that these people are day laborers contracted through a local temporary labor cooperative. They're paid on a piecework basis by the bags of cotton they pick, earning between $20 and $40 US for a day's work. Not much, of course, but it's definitely not slavery, and it merely cleans up the parts of the cotton fields the big harvester machines can't reach. We could see the cotton bales and hand-picked stacks of raw cotton outside the processing plants not far from the fields. The bales were vastly more of the stock than the hand-picked stacks. Western accusations of slave labor have caused a scandal designed to isolate China and strangle its economy. Some U.S. fashion companies have investigated for themselves to prove they are not participating in or benefiting from a slave trade. The slavery slander is really a projection of the West's own centuries of reliance on slavery to enrich itself and generate the Industrial Revolution. Now they pretend to be concerned about human rights in China, but their real problem is that China has been successful and is now able to prosper from its own agriculture and industry. We also visited the beautiful Idka Mosque, one of the biggest in China, in ancient Kashgar. There is a plaque there near the mosque's entrance in Arabic, Chinese, and English, saying it was designated in 2001 as a key relics preservation site by China's National State Council. Ample state funding has been allocated since then for major maintenance projects. The plaque says, "This demonstrates that our country implements the policy of freedom of religion." People come and go in the mosque. 5 times a day, it fills with thousands of worshipers for prayers. The Uyghurs are Sufi Muslims, less strict than their Sunni cousins in most of Central and Western Asia. Kashgar, as the center of Uyghur culture, is famous as the home of songs and dances. We watched dance performances in both Kashgar and Urumqi, Xinjiang's capital. When dancing, the Uyghur women wore bright-colored dresses, headscarves and earrings, bracelets and necklaces. This merrier expression clashes with the strict discipline of the jihadi Wahhabi sect that formed the East Turkestan Islamic movement that waged a violent campaign to convert the Uyghurs and use them for their separatist plans, which was funded by the U.S. after it removed the ETIM from its list of terrorist groups. Both Urumqi and Kashgar teem with tourism, but we were the only gringos present, as a Chinese police officer advised our guide. That's a tragedy. More Westerners need to come and see for themselves. That may be the best way to disprove the official U.S. government and media slanders and help build people-to-people friendship. We found nothing but friendliness everywhere we visited. The Chinese people are definitely not our enemy. and their government is doing a very good job serving and protecting them. It really is time for the U.S. to try harder to make friends with China and help forge common prosperity and a shared future. Thank you very much.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.